The scariest thing in the horror genre is the unknown, and the very best horror movies know that the audience's lack of control is a tool to be used to disarm them and, yes, absolutely scare the willies out of them as well. For good or bad then, all of the following horror movie moments left the audience scratching their heads. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 8 horror movie moments nobody understands. Number 8, what does the ending mean? Martyrs. Martyrs is one of those classic horror movies that's been talked about to death, which is why it's even more impressive that nobody has been able to come down conclusively on its ending one way or another. Though the film starts off relatively simple, with a woman invading a house to murder the people responsible for keeping her captive as a young girl, it quickly moves into the surreal as the woman is killed off and her friend Anna is recaptured and subjected to torture. Her captors have a pretty nuts goal behind her suffering too, to figure out once and for all whether there is life after death. In order to achieve this answer, they need to create a martyr, someone who is tortured so extremely that they essentially become a being caught between two worlds, in a frightening liminal space of being not quite dead, not quite alive. After being gruesomely flayed then, Anna achieves this liminal state and whispers the secret of the afterlife she discovers into the ear of the organization's leader, who then promptly kills herself. Without being privy to what that secret actually was though, audiences are left to ponder what does come after death, if anything. Number 7, what does the picture mean? The Shining. A classic of the genre, The Shining's ending will be debated for all time. You know the story of this movie by now. In a snowed-in old hotel in the mountains, family man Jack Torrance torments his wife and son with an axe, driven mad by the spirits, both the drinking kind and the ghostly kind, housed within the building's walls. Eventually outsmarted by the quick thinking of a 5-year-old boy, Jack freezes to death after becoming lost in the hotel's garden maze. That's not the end though, as we then cut back into the building and zoom in on a particularly eerie framed photograph hanging on the wall. As we get a close-up of what turns out to be a photograph of a dinner party, we see that Jack is actually there in the image, front and center. The only issue is, well, this picture was taken in 1929 and the movie takes place 50 years later and Jack hasn't aged a day. So what's the deal here? Was Jack reincarnated? Was he a ghost the whole time? Was he assimilated by the hotel after dying? It's an ambiguous note that's been hotly debated for years, with no official answer coming either way. Number 6, what is the doppelganger? Annihilation. Annihilation is a truly underrated sci-fi horror film from Alex Garland. A pretty dense flick, all things told, it follows a group of scientists as they venture into the Shimmer, an alien environment-changing phenomenon that causes a break in reality itself. Inside the Shimmer, pretty much anything can happen, as the world mutates and births some terrifying creatures, with one bear in particular guaranteed to keep you lying awake for weeks on end. While there are concrete explanations for virtually everything in the novel that the movie is based on, Garland actually decided to pretty much rip those details up for the movie and opted for a more metaphorical film rather than hard sci-fi. As a result, the ending has left anyone who's seen it scratching their heads. And that ending sees the only scientist who hasn't succumbed to the Shimmer, Natalie Portman's Lena, encountering a shimmering, humanoid in a lighthouse. This being mimics every move Lena makes, before she ultimately manages to escape after hitting it with a grenade. Exploding it with a grenade? Whichever one works, and they tell me I'm a writer apparently. Anyway, back at the base, it's unclear what has actually happened to Lena, who has now taken on characteristics of the other scientists she was with. Exactly what the doppelganger was and how Lena had been changed by her experience is never truly explained. Number 5, what is The Color? The Color Out of Space. The first, but certainly not last, Nicolas Cage movie on this list is a solid H.P. Lovecraft adaptation. In The Color Out of Space, a family becomes tormented by a strange, otherworldly purple light that infects and mutates their bodies. with each passing day birthing increasingly strange sights. With this being based on a H.P. Lovecraft story though, an author who was famous for using the get out of jail free horror card of just describing monsters as being so scary the human mind can't even comprehend them and then just letting the readers do all the legwork, so much of the story is left intentionally ambiguous. As a result, audiences leave the film none the wiser about what the titular colour actually was or how it really works. Hell, the wiki for the story quite literally describes it as a quote, force of unknowable. So when it takes the characters in the film away towards the end, nobody has any idea where they're actually going. Number 4, was Childs the Thing the Thing? The ending of The Thing is another classic and leaves viewers with a question that nobody has been able to concretely answer one way or another. That of course being, is Childs the Thing? But okay, let's back up for a second. After being terrorized by an alien shapeshifter at a research base in Antarctica, only 2 survivors remain by the end of The Thing, Childs and MacReady. The latter has assumedly just blown the alien creature to Kingdom Come, destroying the whole base in the process. Sitting by the fire and slowly freezing to death, he's then greeted by Childs, who has miraculously survived and somehow caught up to him. Both understanding that they're totally done for either way, they tentatively offer each other a drink, uncertain whether one of them is the Thing. Now, there have been a ridiculous amount of theories attempting to get to the bottom of this mystery over the years, analysing everything from the visibility of the actor's breath to the subtitles, but none have ever provided a real answer. That of course is kinda the point though. At this point in the story, it doesn't really matter either way if one of them is the Thing, they're both dead meat once that fire goes out. Number 3, what happened to the world? Resident Evil. Paul W.S. Anderson's Resident Evil movie franchise did not care for such things as continuity or story or characters, and it laughed in the faces of everyone who assumed that it would. A big throaty laugh as well, like the one the Grinch does where he goes, ha! As a result, the franchise played fast and loose with coherency and made a laughingstock of anyone trying to piece together a proper timeline or a stable mythology for the whole story. The biggest headache in the series though regards the state of the world. While the zombie outbreaks initially started small in the first 2 movies, the 3rd movie establishes that the T-virus responsible for that has somehow gone airborne and devastated the entire world. Not only has most of the population been killed, but the virus has actually dried up the oceans and transformed the world into a Mad Max-style desert wasteland. Which is all well and good, that is a very, very cool aesthetic, but then the 4th movie reins all of that back and transports our characters to locations with lush environments, huge bodies of water, and nary a speck of sand in sight. So, what gives? Well, nobody knows. This is just the beauty of this franchise, I guess. Continuity does not matter. The change is actually never even directly addressed in the movies, so audiences are just supposed to rely on their own imagination to fill in the blanks as to why the world changes states so dramatically. Number 2, is it just a drug trip, Mandy? Mandy was a big part of the Nick Cage resurgence, and you can totally see why. It plays to the actor's madcap and memeable strengths without falling into total parody, and straddles the line between being an art house horror and a batshit insane dark comedy. Essentially, the general thrust of the narrative sees Cage attempting to avenge the death of his wife at the hands of a sinister cult. It's easier said than done though, as Cage's character is forced to fight against demonic bikers and later suffers through apocalyptic visions with his sanity well and truly slipping. The film is quite upfront as well with the fact that drugs play a heavy part in what audiences see on screen. Hell, much of the story hinges on characters being dosed up on LSD, so surely the wider moments can be just chalked up to that, right? It's all just one bad trip. Well, it's not really clear. The movie goes so mad and blurs the line between characters tripping and full-on supernatural shenanigans that nobody can really parse what's going on. Number 1, were the bugs real? Bug. Bug is a horror movie all about delusions and paranoia, so it's no surprise that it keeps the reality of its story closely guarded. Ostensibly, it's about two troubled lovers, one of whom is convinced that he's been infested with microscopic bugs by the military. He claims that during his time in the service, he was experimented on and is now being monitored by some unforeseen force, and that the motel room he's staying in is littered with these creepy crawlies. The only issue is, though, the audience never actually sees any of the bugs in question. In fact, his lover initially doesn't see them either, until she also starts to buy into his story and starts to spiral into paranoia with him. Interestingly, while the movie pushes you into thinking that this dude's story is clearly nuts, it does also make you second guess whether or not he might actually be onto something. There's some confirmation bias purposefully left in there, some coincidences that do line up, which makes you leave the movie wondering, were they actually right, or have I been sucked into their conspiracy as well?